Welcome back to the channel, and I am back from my holiday in Tunisia, and I am looking for a reason to play Throne of Liberty again, because obviously being far away from the game, I kind of just lost the interest a little bit, and I'm playing a lot of Call of Duty, so you'll probably see a few Call of Duty videos, but I'm trying to get back into Throne of Liberty. And just when I was thinking about what kind of videos could I make, they release this nice little article talking about loot distribution rules, which clears up a whole bunch of things. And, you know, I'm very excited to see if they're going to make different changes to this and make it just overall a better experience for loot drops in certain activities. So let's go through it. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. So, conquer devious field bosses, courageously explore abyss dungeons, and more in pursuit of Silesium's greatest treasures. Before we dive into loot rules, you'll first need to understand contributions and event items. So contributions is earned by doing damage against the enemy and healing friendly players in battle while said enemy is active. So if you go to any of the big open world bosses, as long as you're doing damage and or healing people on the field, from the moment that boss spawns until they die, you're going to contribute and potentially get a drop chance increase because you are there actively taking part in the battle. Contribution from healing is acquired for healing players both in and out of your party when participating in guild level events. So healers are basically, you know, as long as you're healing anyone in the vicinity, you will get, you know, your contribution towards your drop. So event items, loot dropped during dynamic events that is collected to turn in for the event progress. For example, wolf tails in the wolf hunting event. So as long as you whatever you pick up for whatever event is happening, as long as you turn it into one of the NPCs, you will get your participation within that event. So let's look at what they are talking about in terms of their distribution rules. A lot of this you probably already know. So general activities are open world farming, abyss dungeon farming, quests, contracts, dynamic events, and co-op dungeons. And also applicable enemies, normal, elite, party, elite. So when an enemy dies, loot is assigned to the player who first earned contribution. So if you are a solo player and you hit something first, your loot will go to you. If you are in a group, the loot is assigned to the player's party instead. In this case, the drops from the enemy have equal chance of distribution across all party members. The only exception is party members that have no contribution and are out of range will be excluded from the drop pool. It's interesting that they don't really tell you what range you need to be here. So pretty disappointing that they didn't, you know, say that, because I'd rather know how close I need to be so we can set up in a group, have one person here, one person here, one person here, and kind of just maximize the efficiency of any kind of loot drops. Usually when you're in a team, you're all probably stacked up on each other anyway, but it's still just a shame that they didn't put the range down. All items are evenly distributed when possible. This means if there's 10 items dropped for a party of 5, each player should receive 2 items. If even distribution is not possible, it will randomly select a player to receive an extra drop. I have played this a lot, and whether this is a new change to do with this article, but it never seems like there's a fair chance drop between your party. So if this has been updated since I last played, I'm very excited to get back into it, because we've had a few people get like multiple drops in a row while no one else is getting any. It becomes very frustrating to play the game and push through, because it's like, well, I'm not getting any drops. What's the point of me even playing? So if this is a new change from when I last played, I'm very excited to try it out again. Solent and experience are distributed evenly. Right, peace mode bosses and guild raids. I haven't done a guild raid yet, but peace mode bosses I know a lot about. Applicable enemies, field bosses, and arc bosses. Arch. Distribution rules. When a peace mode field boss dies, all players are sorted by individual player contribution. A guild's overall contribution does not play a role for peace mode bosses and guild ranks. So you don't need to be there with your guild mates, basically. As long as you are there doing damage, contributing in any way, shape or form, your loot chances will be recognized and hopefully rewarded. So here, players must make a minimum contribution to be eligible to receive loot from the bosses. It's a very dangerous way to type it out, because it doesn't tell you what your contribution needs to be. And if we go up to contribution here, the parameters are it's earned by doing damage against the enemy or healing players. So what about tanks? Because this would not match up to tanks, because they will potentially not do enough damage to reach the minimum contribution. So this is a very troubling sign here, because I'm a tank personally, and I know a few other tanks as well. So the fact that this is not written out in any kind of like actual statistics to see what you need to do, it is very worrying, because what's the point in doing anything as a tank? Realistically, what's the point? There are 2 drop types that come from peace mode bosses, which I didn't know. There's contribution drops, which obviously we just spoke about, but also there are random drops. Each item is randomly provided only to remaining players who did not receive one of the contribution drops. A single player is only eligible to receive one of these drops. In other words, a single player cannot receive more than one epic equipment item from a single boss encounter. So after the contribution drops have been thrown out to all the people that they need to go to, there will be one random drop available to anybody within the vicinity that has reached the minimum contribution, but it cannot be someone who got a contribution drop. So this is fine. I feel like they're really strict on it though, because at the end of the day, they could just increase the drop chances and have 3 or 4 random drops drop for 3 or 4 random people. Contribution drops, you know, we could have more chance of getting them, because right now I've done so many bosses in this game and I have never had a drop ever. So, you know, the fact that I'm a tank now, probably even worse odds for me. This is a shame. I really do hope they make changes to this, make it a little bit more friendly to people going over there, a lot more friendly for tanks. So yeah, it's just a bit sad. It's a bit sad. Assuming you've met the minimum contribution requirement described above, but it doesn't actually tell you what your minimum contribution needs to be, but it says if you were to contribute 3% of the total contribution, you would have a 3% chance of acquiring either a sword or the mask. If these were to drop. All players that met the minimum contribution requirement would have an equal chance to acquire the boots, regardless of total contribution. But I still feel like you probably need to meet the minimum contribution. Any player who receives an epic equipment is unable to attain a second piece. So all they're doing here really is just showing how rare it is to get items to drop. And honestly, the things that do drop from these big bosses aren't really that fantastic in my opinion for them to be such a low drop rate. So I really feel they need to just make some changes with these, because there should be more drops more often. It doesn't have to be like everyone gets a drop, but you know, spread out 10 drops over the group of, you know, in each portal. Have 10 drops and then 5 random drops just to random people. The minimum contribution is worrying because we don't know what that is, and I just feel like they could have worded this better. Conflict mode bosses. Applicable enemies, field bosses and arc bosses. Loot is assigned in a 2-stage process. First, loot is assigned to a guild, then the loot is assigned to players within the guild. So basically it's like a double chance of getting it, or a hot. Loot is assigned in 2-stage process. First, loot is assigned to a guild. So if you're there and you're fighting against 5 other guilds, there's a 1 in 5 chance that the drop will go to your guild. And then say there's 10 people in your guild, there's a 1 in 10 chance after the 1 in 5 chance for it to be your drop. So again, drop rates just don't feel worth playing the game for at all right now, especially in conflict mode bosses. If you love PvP, then great, you're going to enjoy it, but the amount of just annoyance that this game is making you grind through to get okay weapons and armor at best is just a bit sad. When a field boss dies during conflict mode, a guild's contribution is calculated as the sum of the individual contribution for each player in the guild who participated in the fight. This is so complex the way they writ it. Basically, the drop will go to the guild with the highest contribution, and then all the players that are there will contribute to the highest contribution. So let's say there's a guild with 2 people, they go over there, they kill a whole bunch of people, they are going to get less chance of the drop than if you had 50 guild members go over who barely get any kills, because the contribution, as far as we know, is just to do damage and be involved and be active. So it just feels like you're fighting against the system, to be fair. The guilds are then sorted based on contribution. Guilds must meet a minimum contribution to be eligible to receive loot from the boss. Loot items are distributed based on chance according to guild contribution. Unlike peace mode bosses, dying to an enemy or another player during a conflict will result in the dying player losing 70% of their individual contribution. That is insane. This is so ridiculous. They need to start making some changes, or this game is going to drop off so quick, meaning it reduces the guild's total contribution at the end of the match. So if one person just gets ganked right at the end, your whole guild could lose it because they lose 70% of their individual contribution. If players A, B, and C had 10%, 15%, and 20% contribution respectively, and all belong to the same guild, then the guild's total contribution would be 45%. That means this guild would have a 45% chance to acquire the Sword and Mask. If the guild successfully acquired the mask, then players A, B, and C would have an equal chance to receive the mask. That's fine. But let's just, you know, so let's say they've got 20% of damage, contribution, whatever you want to call it, and then they die, they lose 70% of their 20%. No, I'm not going to do the maths, but that 20% is going to drop dramatically, so they'll probably fall down to like, it'll be 25%. Probably off the top of my head, it'll go down to like 4%. I don't know if that's right. That is insane. That is insane. In short, tanks are screwed. Tanks in Suicide Watch. This is actually just ridiculous. Nobody saw that when I went down. I don't know why X is showing me that, but you know, I am quite disappointed in the way their systems work. I feel like they could just reward people a lot more, get people involved, and just, you know, just make the game more enjoyable to grind. It doesn't have to be give everyone everything all the time, but it does feel like I'd rather play Call of Duty than play this game now. Such a shame, but I'm glad they're being somewhat clear with their loot drop rules. You know, not a lot of companies will come out and say stuff like this, so you know, you got to give them their respect for that, but they need to make some changes. Let me know what you think down below in the comments section. Thank you for watching. I've been easynow. You guys have been awesome.